So who's in charge here? Who's ridden an elephant? Yeah? Heather? Who's in charge when you're riding an elephant? Elephant? Can the rider be in charge? Yeah, you all may be familiar with this metaphor. The rider is analogous to the cognitive self, the elephant analogous to the emotional self. So when push comes to shove, who's stronger? I don't know why the heck you're hesitating. The elephant is stronger. So even though we're talking about a cognitive discipline in people analytics, are we being attentive to that elephant, to the emotional self, how we're presenting the information and insight? So in order to affect change, I believe that we need to direct the writer, the cognitive self, through data and context. We need to motivate the elephant through visualization and how we communicate. And finally, we need to shape the path. So why does it matter? And how are we going to get there? And this is highlighted in a book called Switch by Dan and Chip Heath. I believe Dan teaches at Stanford, Chip at Duke. I might get it mixed up, but they are frequent contributors to Fast Company and other publications. Great book. They have several other books that are more recent than that. I just wanted to highlight this again just to ground us. We're really assessing what others are doing. How does that relate to us? And exploring options by which we can get to our future state. So I really want us to challenge ourselves and our organizations to what is that desired future state? What does great look like? I hope we're not here just to make these incremental gains. And yet, at the end of the day, we might just have these little incremental gains and might have to celebrate that. That being said, we might have to be a bit more audacious. So I encourage you, particularly in this forum, to be a bit more audacious and explore what's possible. And in turn, we can go back to our work and create and act. So I mentioned this yesterday. The beginning of wisdom is calling things by their right names. And this has been paramount in my thinking since it was first introduced to me in the middle 2000s. Because when we talk about people analytics, we talk about workforce planning, we talk about AI, what the heck are we talking about? If I asked all of you to define people analytics, would we get 100 different responses or the same response? I would say different, probably, right? So let's define it for our purposes here. What is people analytics? Well, people analytics could be all this stuff, right? And, structural equation model, natural language processing, predictive analytics. And this gets pretty mind-numbing, doesn't it? So it's pretty intimidating. These are all analytical techniques. So again, being very conscious of the language that we're using. People analytics, what is analytics? I did not stage that question very well. It's a verb. It speaks to a process. It's an activity of doing things. What I would contend ultimately that we're going to be generating a product, something, but we also have to look at the system by which we are doing this work. Look at all this stuff is happening, right? Business strategy and management, scenario planning, we have talent markets and recruiting, we have ethics and risk, we have all this stuff. And historically, people analytics has been yet another bubble, but I would contend it's all of this. It's embedded in everything that we do now. When I first started in this work, there would be an HR strategy, or a business strategy, HR strategy, and then we have some initiatives, and then we would have some owners of those initiatives. Then on the far right of the spreadsheet, there was Al, how are we going to measure it? I'm like, well, I don't know. I got headcount and I got turnover and maybe some engagement data here and there, but that's pretty much it. But can we and should we not be at the forefront of that conversation? Should not we be thinking more openly about what questions we need to ask, like we talked about yesterday, and then designing towards that end? When we talk about people analytics, I would like to open it up to beyond just people. We're talking about individuals, teams, groups, and organizations. So for the definition that I put forth is this. People analytics is a process. So calling it out is in fact a process, is a verb by which we generate insight. Insight is a noun, it's a product, it's something that we actually push out into the world and are generating insight into thoughts, feelings, and behaviors of individuals, teams, groups, and organizations. So whatever your definition is, we need to do it with speed, we need to do it at scale, and we need to make it sustainable. You with me? These challenges are pretty significant. They're not easy. Again, when I started doing this work, I was effectively a researcher studying a problem, do a nice deliverable, and walk away. No longer is that acceptable. We need to create things that are sustainable, that go to hundreds, if not thousands of people, and we need to do it fast. That's tough. It's tough work. Okay. So with that, who here has a mission statement for their people analytics organization? Anyone? No. So if you're in role, what I would like you to think about is, what is your elevator pitch? Think about this over the course of the day, and when you walk away, what are you going to tell people that you do? I used to dream about going up the elevator when I was at Gap, and if the CEO was on the elevator at the time, if he asked me what I did, how I would answer. Now, granted, I'm a little bit of a freak, but that's something that I consciously thought about, because I wanted to have a really good answer. And if I said, oh, I do people analytics, and if you've been in the field long enough, you just see people's eyes gloss over. What the heck is that? But we have to talk really specifically about what we're doing, and that narrative needs to be very confidence-inspiring. Okay, so again, please think about that. We mentioned this yesterday, and I think many of the stories, if taken with this lens, echoed this. You know, whether it be executives, HR business partners, workers themselves, what are we trying to do for them? So first who, then what? Here, in my view, based on my experience in the space over the last 20 or so years, we have not done a good job of creating a governance structure by which to frame our work. And this is going to be increasingly important, because no longer do I believe we're going to be doing people analytics exclusively. We're actually going to be looking at how work gets done. And we talked about that yesterday, because AI, robotic automation, globalization, gig economy, all these things are helping organizations get work done, right? There's people in that equation, and those skills of those individuals who are doing work is going to constantly shift. Are you with me? Are we getting ahead of that? And for us to assume that we in HR and our silo are going to have visibility into those shifts is not accurate. We're going to have to talk to IT. We're going to have to talk to procurement. We're going to have to talk to those who are doing the work currently and better understand what's happening now and what's likely going to happen in the future. Then designing towards that end. That's going to inform skill development, recruiting, org design, all these other factors that we touched on before. Okay? So let's take this framing as well, because again, when I first started in this work, it was really having that data way on the far right. It was really ill-suited to answer the questions, and it was very frustrating for me. Now, looking forward, here we have worker experience. Who has employee experience or worker experience type initiative in your organization? Show of hands. So I'd say probably a quarter of the room, which is fantastic. It's the norm. Then it begs the question, how close is your data and analytics group to that employee experience effort? I would hope it's very close, because what happens when someone goes through an experience? And we again talked about this yesterday. They're generating data, right? They're also consuming data, consuming insight. So are we mindful of the processes that we're creating, the technologies that are standing up those processes, the actual experiences versus the hoped for experience, and understanding the delta between the two? And that is going to be our culture. The culture, in my view, is very simple. It's the stories that people within that group tell about their experience in that group or organization. It's those stories. That's the real culture. So are we consciously crafting those stories, and are we understanding how we can improve them over time? So data analytics, AI, ML is embedded throughout all these dimensions. You agree? Again, this is the part where you really make Al feel good. You do like, I'm kidding. I'm kidding. So this would be a build in the ideal sense, but in the interest of time, who here has a prioritization matrix or 2x2 like this? So Thomas will talk about it in a few minutes. So here, I just want to outline that fact that if you don't have a means in which to take a group through a prioritization exercise, because if you're the one, and you in the CHRO, it might be your reality right now, but I think the ideal future state is you have a governance body signing up to prioritize what work can get done. Here we have, it's a reverse scale, so 0 to 10, 10 being most difficult, 1, 2 being least complex or difficult. So if it's high impact, not much effort, do first. You probably have seen something like this before, but if it's high impact and it takes some effort, it might be worth doing. Now there's others who have said, hey, we're actually going to do this first, and there's a whole innovation logic behind it. But at the end of the day, what I like to see, and I've seen this in leading practice companies, is now you're setting expectations about what you're doing, and now there's an appetite. Now they're involved in the process as opposed to doing the big aha. The big aha is not a good strategy. If you're in that hopeful, okay, we're going to push this out, and all of a sudden people are going to jump up and down, do high fives, chest bumps. No. Please get them involved early and sign up for that. And that's a bit what George talked about yesterday. So I'm going to have a couple more slides, and then we're going to, oh, I went too fast. Then I'm going to give it over to Thomas. So who here has a talent strategy model? You know, how you're thinking about formulating talent strategies. Do you even have a definition for talent strategies? Because here's the reality that I'm seeing is that organizations have recruiting strategies, they have learning strategies, they have comp strategies, but they don't have integrated talent strategies. And I think that's going to change. I think it needs to change. Then it begs the question, do we have the structures by which that change can happen? Now we have McKinsey, Willers Towers Watson, Josh Bersin, a host of others who are talking about the fact that we need new management models in business. Yet many organizations are still stuck in their siloed way of doing things. There's a lot of inertia towards that end. We, however, in people analytics have a very unique opportunity to facilitate talent strategy. Because by definition, we have to have systematic thinking. Who's familiar with firms of endearment? I know Thomas and I were talking about it yesterday. So firms of endearment, if you don't know, it's not terms of endearment. I'm a sensitive guy, so I like it, but that and beaches, 2 favorite movies. That's a total lie, by the way. They're good though. But how the dots connect. So if we as analysts have to understand how the dots connect currently, in the past, and hopefully in the future, at least to a level of confidence, we have to have that growth mindset, that learning mindset, that insatiable curiosity and willingness to learn. We need to be expert communicators, both in terms of communicating out. There's so much energy around, oh gosh, I got to be a good data analyst, I got to tell the story. Have we even asked, is that the right story to tell in the first place? If we engage our customer, what are they needing? How are they thinking? And let's go test for that. So again, we need to be really conscious about how we're communicating. And finally, we need to get away from this idea of certainty. If A exists and we do B, then C is going to result. Yeah, that would be really sweet if the world worked that way, isn't it? But it's not. If A exists and we do B, C may happen to a certain level of confidence, to a certain probability. And that's our product at the end of the day. Okay? So as I wrap up, here we have the environment, we have our situation, we have our market in which we're doing business, we have our org strategy, and we've touched on, we'll call it a talent strategy, but we touched yesterday that we have individuals doing their own thing. They're developing themselves, and we don't have visibility into that very much. Educational institutions and societies, our economic development boards, are doing their own thing. What we have to do in our discipline is we need to bring this together and formulate a talent strategy that benefits our communities as well as our organizations and the individuals within it. And we're not there yet. Are you with me on that? And again, I think we in people analytics, and I would go so far as to say, I know we in people analytics have a unique opportunity to facilitate this discussion because we understand the data that's out there that's good. We also have visibility in the data that's lacking that is going to compromise the quality of the story. And that can set the stage for further improvements. Okay? So with that, that's my last presentation here. I will be facilitating as we go. But as I am passionate about, the opposite of a victim is what? Where's my son? I'm just kidding. The opposite of a victim, and we can debate this, but and I forget the name. It's not David Light Shields, but it's in a book called The Power of TED. The opposite of a victim is a creator. There's a lot of victim language in HR and in people analytics. We have to create a reality. We're not being victimized by a persecutor. No hero is going to sweep in. We have challenges, and we need coaches and collaborators to help us create the reality that's going to be appropriate for us and our organization. So go out there, be the change, be a creator. And with that, Thomas, you want to come up, sir?